If you're the kind of person who doesn't get irked by people poking fun at your religion or lampooning it, I think you'll enjoy this film. I think this is the funniest and best project that Maher's ever done. I also think it's the most reflective of who he is. Now, I've watched his show, and I've seen his stand-up, and most of the time, I don't think he's funny. I don't mean, oh, that's not funny, it's offensive. I mean, he tells jokes, and I don't laugh. But in this film, it was as though I was hanging out with him, and maybe that made a difference. He seemed to be having a good time. He was light and upbeat. This movie is very up. There's a lot of energy in this film. And Maher seemed about 10 years younger in it. He was very youthful and excited, even when he was visiting places that he thought were silly, like the Creation Museum and the reenactment of Old Jerusalem. He seemed really excited to be there. As for the soundtrack, like all the other what I call social documentaries, this is his film, it's his point to make, and I may have been a little bit more forgiving than I normally would be because there were songs going on in this that I really like. They were nice and loud. They sort of punctuated what he was trying to say. Some of the statements made by the people he interviewed were intercut by little film clips. One person said that if evolution were true, man would have had sex with an ape woman, and then he cut to a clip from Planet of the Apes, which is probably the biggest laugh I got out of the whole film. Now, what is and isn't funny is entirely subjective, so I'll just say, I thought it was funny, and I think a lot of people may as well. Apart from that, though, he's also making a real and non-satirical social commentary, and that's where I run into a few problems. Bill Maher is an atheist, and he's of similar mind when it comes to the leaders of the so-called New Atheist movement, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, etc. The only real difference in thought that I can see between him and the rest is that Maher doesn't seem to be a materialist. To quickly address the theological or anti-theological arguments he made, the stuff that ends with, come on, isn't that silly, or you don't really believe that, do you? I don't take those questions seriously, because the person asking the question isn't taking the question seriously, and that's fine. You don't have to take theology seriously unless you want to enter into a discussion about it. And he wasn't trying to enter into a discussion about anything other than how silly he thought it was. He also sort of loosely presents a copycat theory about the story of Jesus, that the Jesus story was contrived and pieced together from the pagan mystery religions. He mentions two things, one of which I really want to set the record straight about, and that's the date of Jesus' birth. He points out that we say that Jesus was born on December 25th, and that that's the same birthday of other pagan gods. I'm going to address this because it irritates me. December 25th was posited for the birth of Christ in order to correspond with other pagan holidays, as a sort of olive branch to pagans who the church was trying to convert, and also, eventually, as an attempt to Christianize Rome. It is not the day that Jesus is said to have been born in the Bible. There is no such day given in Scripture. Second, he references the mystery gods who supposedly had striking similarities with the story of Jesus. Now, this is exaggerated on both sides. The best I can determine is that a lot of those supposed similarities don't show up until about 200 to 400 years after Jesus, and some of them don't exist at all. They just made them up. More importantly, anyone making that point is insinuating that Christianity was contrived deliberately. I don't think that could possibly be the case because, one, you don't throw well-known pagan myths into a story that you're contriving in order to convert Jews, and two, had that been the case, it would have been instantly recognized by the Jewish converts, and their objection would have been they're trying to turn Judaism into paganism, not they're claiming that this guy was the Son of God. Another point made by Maher is that religion can lead people to be certain that God is telling them to do terrible things and cause violence and war, and that these people may one day launch a nuclear terror on the world because of that. And that's true. It certainly can. Religion certainly has that potential. It's his solution, and moreover his strategy to achieve that solution, that puzzles me. His solution seems to be, that people should abandon religion altogether. That in and of itself is a bit extreme, but his method of convincing people to do that seems to be an attempt to make people feel silly for being religious. Maher seems to take the Sam Harris approach. That is, that we should make it, quote, fundamentally embarrassing to be religious. Well, throughout history, being religious has been, at times, fundamentally embarrassing. It's been fundamentally illegal, and it's been fundamentally deadly, and yet it persisted. The solution, I think, is to reject and push back against extremism and fundamentalism. I think we need to do that in every sector of thought, not just religious, but political, social, and economic. Those things have every bit the potential that religion has to fuel those problems, but neither one are causes in and of themselves. Maher also seems to agree with this notion that so-called moderate believers are part of the problem because they allow faith to be seen as a virtue and thus fuel the rationale that extremists use to justify their actions. Now, the animal rights and environmental movements can and have motivated activists to kill butchers, loggers, and people that they perceive to be committing crimes against Mother Nature and against animals. It has also led to some very good reforms having to do with the environment and the meat industry in particular. I don't think that Maher or anyone else would say that people who don't kill butchers are moderate animal rights activists. I don't think he would say that those people are giving cover to those killers by validating the environmental or animal rights movements, and I don't think he would say that we ought to do away with belief in environmentalism or animal rights as a means of ending the violence. Moreover, if he or anyone else did think that those movements were dangerous or faulty, let me employ their solution. I'll go to an animal rights rally, and to anyone within the sound of my voice, say things like, "Come on, you think animals have the same rights as humans? What are you, nuts? Animals don't have an intellect. Come on, are you going to try to protect cockroaches too? Hey, those sprouts you're eating have a mother too, you know. Come on, you're crazy." And I'll see how far that gets me. I think that Maher's diagnosis and solution, like many others in the new atheist movement, represents the same denial of complexity that we saw in Jesus Camp and Hell House. And personally, I think his solution is a knee-jerk reaction to a problem that has many dimensions and layers. This ends my review of Religulous. I thought it was funny and well made, but if there were any point to it other than making religious people look silly, I don't think it was made very effectively. Stay tuned for part 2, where I'll review a film on the opposite side of the spectrum called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. Stay tuned.